Michigan, Notre Dame, the third time these teams will play under the lights in the Big House since 2011. Type Go Blue if you think, hell, if you know Michigan is going to beat the Irish. Be the first win for Jim Harbaugh as an underdog as head coach at Michigan. Type Go Blue below here on the Michigan Football Report YouTube channel. We got a great show for you coming up. Before we get into it, type Go Blue to will Michigan to victory tomorrow night against Notre Dame at the Big House. It's Michigan. It's Notre Dame. A battle of a couple top 20 teams. The Wolverines losing last week to Penn State. Of course, earlier in the year to Wisconsin. Notre Dame's only loss coming on the road at Georgia, who was a top 5 team at the time. These teams have played as ranked opponents 4 times in their last 10 matchups, with them splitting those 4 games. The Wolverines are 1.5-point underdogs after starting, by some reports, as high as 4-point favorites, although I never actually saw it with any of the sportsbook I follow. I saw them as a 2.5-point favorite. Now down to a 1.5-point underdog. The over-under started at 48, folks. It is now up to 51.5. This game will be kicked off 7:30 Eastern Time, nationally televised on ABC. We've got a great show. We're going to compare, contrast the two teams, their quarterbacks, their offenses, defense, go through my 3 keys to the game if Michigan's going to get this victory over Notre Dame. You see the point spread has swung 4 points from Michigan being the favorite to now the underdog, and the public and the big-time sports bettors are both in agreement on this. When you see 75% of the money, the actual dollars bet, have come in on Notre Dame, with only 30% of the bets coming in. That's each individual bet placed, no matter the dollar amount. 70% of the bets and 75% of the money going on the Irish. So unless something changes now with Notre Dame being the favorite, maybe some big-time bettors come in at the end, it looks like the public and the pro bettors are in consensus that Notre Dame is going to win this game. But total open at 48.5, got up to 52. The line has kind of shifted 4 points, and the reason we know these things, folks, is because we are educated gamblers here at Chat Sports, the Michigan Football Report, because of the Action Network app. Want to make sure you guys knew about them. We talk about them every show, most shows I should say. Most shows 60% of the time, but you can get 40% off the $10 a month service charge they have for their amazing subscription product, down to $5.99 a month, going to chatsports.com/deal. You will know where the public's putting their money, where the big-time bettors are putting their money, and you can see all the trends. You'd know whether Jim Harbaugh is going to cover and not cover, if Michigan's been doing well, not versus spread, Notre Dame. It is the only way to bet on sports, to have the information to bet on sports. The Action Network app, chatsports.com/deal for 40% off. But I want to know from you guys, you think you're such good Michigan fans, you know everything about the team, they're going to win, they're going to lose, predict the score, and I'll pay for what I guess almost 5 months of the Action Network for you. $25 from my pocket to yours if you comment below before the game starts, of course. None of you people, you comedians, throwing it in there in the middle of the third quarter or after the game's ended thinking you're gonna confuse me. Happens every single week. Predict the score, Michigan, Notre Dame, and of course, tell me who's going to win. The first person to put the score below, we're going to Venmo you $25 next week. So let's get into my 3 keys to the game for Michigan against Notre Dame. Number 1, you got to start strong if you're Michigan's football team, because they have stunk this year when it comes to getting off to a strong start. We're talking about Wisconsin. They were down 35-0 at one point in the third quarter. Penn State down 21-0 in the second quarter. Didn't have much of a chance versus Wisconsin, but had to come roaring back against Penn State to cut it to 7 and then have an opportunity inside the 10-yard line. 4 shots to the end zone, couldn't get it done. We had the unfortunate Ronnie Bell dropped pass there for Michigan. But this is not a new thing for Jim Harbaugh. Anytime they lose games, it seems to be where they get off to a very slow start on offense. So I want to see Michigan start strong, specifically on offense. I'm not really sure what you expect from the defense other than just don't give up points. I'm not sure if you can start strong, end strong. I guess giving up points is starting weak for the defense. That would be slow. Speaking of the defense, though, Michigan, in their last 6 losses, have given up over 20 points in the first half under Don Brown. So certainly the defense can get off to a better start if they're going to win this game. Second key to the game for the Wolverines, no turnovers, or at least limit your turnovers, I guess. I'm going to be in Ann Arbor, flying out here in a few hours, heading to Detroit Airport, and I will say this. 7 games this year. What's the one game that Michigan had the definite turnover advantage? 4 turnovers to the opponent to 1 for the Wolverines. This was the day this bad boy was in town, okay? I snuck this thing. They had guards at every single entrance with my photo looking for me, probably. And I still snuck this bad boy in, even though they told me I couldn't, okay? And Michigan turned the ball over once to Iowa's 4 turnovers. And oh, by the way, you had 2 or 3. I can't remember. One was not real or a penalty, but I think you had 2 or 3 more fumbles, at least 2, that Michigan recovered in that game. And don't tell me that wasn't a little bit of the magic pixie dust coming from the no turnover chain there at the Big House. So this bad boy will be there in all its glory on Saturday night. Lastly, you've got to pressure Ian Book. When Michigan pressures quarterbacks, they win. It's a pretty proven formula, one of the only proven formulas that exists in the Jim Harbaugh era. The other one, the 125-yard rushing, got slaughtered. I think Michigan was something like 39-2 or something crazy like that when they ran over 125 yards under Jim Harbaugh. Didn't get the job done, although they did cover the 125 mark and much more against Penn State. So you've got to pressure Notre Dame quarterback Ian Book. Michigan didn't see him last year. If you remember, Brandon Wimbush, the returning starter from 2017, started the year, got the first 4 starts of the season before Ian Book took over kind of the second half of that 4th game, led Notre Dame to their 2nd undefeated regular season this decade, which is surprising in a lot of ways. I don't think many people realize that Notre Dame has those 2 undefeated seasons in the 2010s. And so they're going to see Ian Book for the first time. He is not as accurate of a passer this year as he was last year. His numbers aren't looking the same. And against Don Brown's defense that lives and dies by pressuring quarterbacks and getting guys to get rattled and leaving his corners and sometimes his safeties and linebackers on an island guarding guys, especially across the field. If you give Ian Book time to throw, he's going to pick Michigan apart. They've got 2 really big-time wide receivers and one of the best tight ends in the country. So you've got to put pressure on Ian Book. He has more than 3 seconds to throw. Good night. Notre Dame's going to be up a couple scores before we even know it. Let's take a look at the last 10 games in this series. Notre Dame is on a 2-game winning streak, and thanks to some, I think, just bad decision-making on part of Jim Harbaugh and former athletic director, interim athletic director Jim Hackett, and even before that, Dave Brandon. Michigan had to go on the road back-to-back matchups against Notre Dame, 2018 and back to 2014, the time that the last game in the series, at that time forever until they revived it when Jim Harbaugh came on board. But Michigan hasn't won a game since the last night game in this series, night game in Michigan Stadium in this series, 2013. So it's been 6 years. 2012, the Notre Dame undefeated team beat Denard Robinson down, and then 2011, the first under the lights game. You go back to the Rich Rod era, 2010. It was the great Shea Patterson, the great Denard Robinson, where he had that 90-yard touchdown run in the first half, did something like 250 rushing, 250 passing in that game. 2009, Tate Forcier to Greg Matthews to win it. 2008, Rich Rod's first year, don't want to talk about it. 2007, the 38-0 annihilation of Jimmy Clausen's freshman season. And in 2006, Michigan goes on the road. The last time the Michigan football program won a game on the road against a top 10 team, 2006, went into South Bend and beat number 2 Notre Dame 47-21. Let's take a look at this Michigan offense under Josh Gattis. 391 yards per game, folks. That is fairly pathetic, but even though how pathetic that is and how pathetic that sounds, it's getting better, right? They were in the 90s and the hundreds 3-4 weeks ago. 237 yards through the air, and finally up to something respectable, although still pretty pedestrian, 154 yards per game on the ground. Michigan only averaging 29 points a game. Let me reiterate that, 29 points a game. Think back to the 2016 season. Through like 8 games, Michigan was averaging over 50 points a game. And this year, through 7 games, they're averaging 29 points per game. So the offense has had real struggles getting the ball in the end zone. Field goal kicking is just, it's good sometimes, then all of a sudden it's not. Then we're kicking 58-yard field goals. So Michigan's got to put more points on the board. And they've done it recently against Notre Dame. The last 3 totals in this game have gone over 60 points each, combined scores between the two. So Michigan's put up 30-plus at home several times, 2013, 2011. And before that, you saw the scores. Let's take a look at the Michigan football defense now. Improving. We're struggling against the run earlier in the year. Now at 120, now 30th in the nation against the run. This is the number 14 defense in the country, giving up 19 points a game. That is number 21. Much lower than you've gotten from Don Brown's in his 3 years, now 4th year as Michigan's defensive coordinator. Typically, you go back to 2016, 17 even, 2018 last year. Once Michigan hit the 5, 6, 7 game of the season, they were in the top 5 scoring, total yards, and passing yards. And I think rushing sometimes has been one of the ones that's been a little further back, although there has been a year or two that has been in the top 10 for rushing as well. This is a little bit of an outlier. You see them in the teens, even in the 20s in some of these total offensive statistics, defensive statistics given up through the year. I think the points are the most concerning, 19 a game. That's much higher than Don Brown has typically given up. But you end last year giving up 100-plus points in your final 2 games, Ohio State and Florida, coming into this year. Something's got to change with the defense in these big games. They've got an opportunity to do it against Notre Dame coming up tomorrow night. But let's go back to the offense for a second. Does Josh Gattis make any difference for this Michigan offense this season versus last season? Last year, they had no offensive coordinator, if you remember. So is Josh Gattis better than nobody? 424 yards through 7 games, total offense last year. And the schedules are pretty dang close, folks. It's not like there were a bunch of patsies last year. You went on the road against Notre Dame. You had games in the middle of the season against Wisconsin and Michigan State, etc. 270 yards a game passing to 237 this year. So clearly they're passing more and they're getting more yards. But look at the drop-off in rushing yards, folks. You had the Wisconsin game, which was the 7th game last year, where Michigan put up some stellar, I think 300-some yards rushing last year. And you go from 217 last year on the ground to 154. And that's only getting better the last couple of weeks. It was abysmal prior to that. 38.1 points per game last season, folks. 29 points a game. So Michigan's 2 scores down, a touchdown, and nearly a field goal below where they were last year. And then just look at it. 7 games last year, 5 turnovers to 14 turnovers this year. Turnovers are the story of this offense, and if they don't stop, you're going to end up with a second straight loss, drop Michigan to 5-3 on the year Saturday night. If Michigan can hold it to 1 turnover and none, force a couple from Notre Dame, I think that'll end up being the difference in this game. I don't necessarily think that Notre Dame is the juggernaut on the ground that Wisconsin is, or there's the juggernaut across the field that Ohio State is. And as such, this is a game Michigan can and should win, but they're only going to do it if they execute early, like I said, and don't fall down the trap of turning the ball over, fumbling it, throwing interceptions like they have from many of the games this year. As we showed you earlier, folks, Michigan is now a 1-point underdog. Did we say 1.5-point underdog? 1.5-point underdog now. You think Michigan's going to win, which I think they're going to win, you know they're going to win. Go ahead and put some money on them with our partner, BetDSI. Use that promo code to get 120% deposit bonus when you make your first deposit. Quick math, you put 100 in, you got an extra 120 sitting there, 220 in your account. You can put $50 on the Wolverines. They lose, you're still above what you put in there. So make sure you get the best deposit bonus in the game to bet on sports with our partner, BetDSI. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code GOBLUE. You see the line has shifted big time. And I'll say this. If Notre Dame wins this game, win by a couple points, the sports books are going to take a bath because all the money's coming out of Notre Dame to do it. They don't build these palatial casinos out in the desert because the sports books are wrong. So I think that means Michigan's going to take this one. Vegas is going to have a big payday on the Wolverines. Take a look at the matchups between these two offenses. Notre Dame is a much better offense efficiency-wise and putting the ball in the end zone-wise than Michigan is, averaging 60 yards more per game, the number 30 offense in the country to Michigan's number 80. 262 yards, so they're passing more than Michigan. 30 yards, 25 yards more per game. Rushing, they're a lot better than Michigan. 190 to about 150, so 35 yards more per game for the Irish on the ground. And then scoring, they scored 10 points more per game than Michigan, the number 13 scoring offense in the country. But the most importantly, folks, and this is what the game's going to come down to, 14 turnovers from Michigan, the number 109th ranked team. And by the way, that's tied with a few other teams. One more turnover, they're down to like 125. Notre Dame's only turned the ball over 4 times this year, the number 3 team in the country when it comes to turnovers. So, Michigan's Achilles heel, turnovers all year. And it's not just interceptions. Shea Patterson's not throwing interceptions left and right. It's the dang fumbles that have been killing them. So, Notre Dame doesn't turn the ball over. Michigan does. It's going to be pouring rain according to the forecast now. So, who does that favor? I guess it probably, we've been talking about this in the office. I actually think it might favor Notre Dame because Michigan's sloppy. They'll get sloppier. Notre Dame, won't get necessarily sloppier. But let's take a look at the defenses. Let's see what's going to go on the defense side of the ball for these two teams. Michigan, the better defense. So the stats kind of are inverse of what the offense was. We saw that Michigan is 50 yards or less in a lot of the categories against Notre Dame. Now the 50 yards or so better on the defensive side of the ball, only giving up 283 yards per game to Notre Dame's 350. So that's something to keep an eye out. Where do you get the yards? It's pretty evenly divided between rush and pass, but you can pass the ball on Notre Dame. They're giving up 17 points a game to Michigan's 19, and neither team is giving up third downs at a very high clip. You see Michigan number 19 in the country on third down defense, where Notre Dame is just slightly below them. So why we look at all these stats is because this is a monumentally, I think, it's a big moment in the history of Michigan football, at least in the history of Michigan football under Jim Harbaugh. You lose these two games back-to-back, Penn State and Notre Dame. You fall to 5-3. The narrative continues that Harbaugh can't win the big game. He'll fall to 0-2 against Notre Dame. He'll, going along with 2-2 against Michigan State, 0-4 against Ohio State. You go into those two games, Michigan State and Ohio State, the next two home games, the last three home games of the year, Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State. The narrative of Harbaugh's tenure at Michigan could be written over the next 5 weeks. Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State. You win those three games, you're feeling good going 10-2 into a bowl game. You win that, you get an 11 and the elusive 11-win season for Jim Harbaugh. I'm not sure about you guys. I think this is a pivotal game. A 5-3 record, that just stinks. Michigan won't be ranked anymore. Harbaugh is high. I don't care whether Jim Harbaugh sends a letter to recruits and players or not, stating that he's, the rumors from Football Scoop are crap. Like he said, if you go to 5-3 on a team that was favored to go to the College Football Playoff and win the Big Ten before the year, you have big time problems and you are not getting it done as Michigan's football coach. But let's take a look at who the man I think the entire game is going to come down to. It's this man right here, Shea Patterson. A down season for him, statistically. And it didn't look like he had confidence all year, really outside of two halves of football. The first half Michigan played all year and the last half they played all year. Middle Tennessee State, where he got out hot to 200 yards passing in the first half, 3 touchdowns. And then the hot start, the hot finish to the Penn State game where they came a Ronnie Bell drop away from tying that game up or potentially going for 2 and winning the game on the road in Happy Valley. You see at this point last year, through 7 games. Let's start at the top. 69% completion, nice for Shea last year in 2018 through 7 games. Only 57% this year. That's a big drop-off. More passing yards this year. Michigan's been last year they were blowing teams out at a much higher pace and put the ball on the ground from a running perspective. More Josh Gattis' offense want to pass more, but look at the touchdowns. More touchdowns passing for Shea last year. More interceptions this year, but Shea has put the ball in the end zone 5 times this year. But take a look at the stat down below. 6 fumbles for Shea, 4 Michigan has lost. So Shea Patterson's, I guess, just uncertainty in this offense in a lot of ways and lack of efficiency and completion percentage. Some of those are drops. Those wide receivers Saturday night in Happy Valley, at least 7 drops that I counted. Could have been more, including the game-deciding one, were the difference in the game. But predict the score, guys. Michigan, Notre Dame. We made the offer at the top of the show. The first person to predict the score accurately and pick the winner below, I'm going to Venmo that person $25 next week after this game. Let's take a look at Notre Dame's quarterback, Ian Book. Took Notre Dame to the playoff last year after not starting until the 5th game of the year, I believe it was. Took over kind of as the full-time quarterback in the 4th game from Brandon Wimbush, but he's throwing a 63% clip this year, almost 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. The difference between him and Shea Patterson right now are the amount of turnovers, touchdowns to turnovers. Shea Patterson, those 9 touchdown passes, 5, of course, on the ground as well. But Ian Book, that 14-2 ratio is the difference in why Notre Dame is in the top 10 with a chance still at the College Football Playoff, and Michigan, their season is hanging on by a thread, and this game against Notre Dame will go a long way to seeing whether or not they can have the second half of the season be a turnaround and lead to a 10-2 year and an opportunity for a big-time bowl game, or if it'll be a 4 or 5 loss season for Jim Harbaugh in year 5. You see the stats there, you see the game, but I want to know from you guys, Who's the better quarterback? And maybe even more importantly, if you could only choose one of these quarterbacks to be the QB for your team, for your Michigan Wolverines, or, by the way, thank you Notre Dame fans for joining the show. I've been seeing you guys in the comments from our Penn State postgame shows all week, so welcome aboard the Yoder Michigan Football Report hype train. But who would you rather have as your quarterback? Type S for Shea, type B for Book. Look, I love Shea. Shea's my boy, but I'm going to go B for Book at this point because he is the quarterback that's led his team to an undefeated season. He's the quarterback that went down and had Notre Dame looking really good in SEC country against a top 4 or 5 ranked Georgia team. And Shea Patterson has frankly not put together those type of performances, especially on the road. So in this regard, I would take Ian Book, but Shea Patterson has every opportunity to prove me wrong on Saturday night. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching the Michigan Football Report. The turnover chain will be in Ann Arbor on Saturday, so keep an eye out for it. While you're waiting for the game, I got some more videos for you right here. Boom and boom. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe so you'll never miss an episode of the Michigan Football Report. Go Blue.